Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. This is John with Tommy's Top Picks here to bring you your weekly flesh and blood market update. And boy, do we have a week. Lots of things to talk about. Macroeconomic indicators have come in, including CPI. A bunch of stuff I want to go over there and the implications for the macroeconomic environment. We have some very interesting changes in market dynamics with recent releases that I want to demonstrate, show, and look at the data with you. And then the market itself seems to be having a bit of a day, a bit of a week, I guess. Moving around, lots of interesting things to talk about. So let's dive in. Starting off with Tales of Aria, up 8.33% to 48 from 44. Not that big of a deal. It is an unlimited product. It was at 48 a few weeks ago, so nothing crazy here, as you can see. It was there. But I think there might be some market dynamics happening that will probably impact this product, and I have a feeling that this was thrown in the furnace, a good chunk of it, per James White's interview about older products, Everfest specifically, but he mentioned other products have also gone through this same phase. I think it is going to impact Tales Unlimited to a degree. I'm guessing they pulled back or threw out a bunch of the product. We're not sure on that, but the main reason I look at that is because, oh, you guys can't see the whole thing. Oh, because these stupid filters always pop up and make this. There we go. Well, there we go. You'll note the unlimited case is list price higher than the first edition case. I'm guessing this is actually going to be equal rarity or rarer. I'm guessing equal at best. And if you look at this and click on it, it actually has a shipping cost that puts it above it, but it's only above it by $12. So it's not like it's a huge difference. So first edition and unlimited are parity-ish and maybe even reverse parity if we find out that it has been burned. And we'll talk about why I think that might be a possibility in a few minutes. Moving on, Crew Unlimited cases are down 4% to 275 from 286. This is a local low, probably the lowest low it's been in a long time if you've been looking for Crew Unlimited cases, which I'm not sure why you would at this point. I know Everfest kind of outpowered it, more classes in the later supplemental sets, so I'm not sure that Crew is the same vibe that it was before. It was, kind of back when I first started doing this, the loved set, the set everyone held dear, because it was a supplemental product. It had every class. It had some cool hits in it. There's a lot of love for this product for a long, long time. I think it's been supplanted by Everfest, honestly. But I don't know. So, but if you are, a collector and want a case of everything, this is probably a very good opportunity within Crew to get, to pick up that, because it is at a very low price. 275 is, I don't know how low it goes, but just saying it's pretty low. That said, not financial advice, and print runs are not, not huge, but not tiny either on Unlimited. So, it's out there. It will eventually go up. It will eventually disappear. It will eventually be a collectible thing, just like all these. But, that is for you to decide how you want to play into that. All right. Moving on to first edition boxes. WTR first edition is up 12% to $2,950 from this $2,595. We were there, and we were stable there for about a month before this dip. I think this was a one-time shot. Someone said that this wasn't... Oh, I didn't even check that. I should double-check that really quick. 1 second. Let me just look really quick because I have it right here. Oh, shoot. Okay. Yep, we're going to adjust this. Sorry, guys. This 29 or 25.95 tricked me again. Basically what happened was it has an image. Someone took a picture with it, and those for some reason, and I don't understand why, but those for some reason don't get listed on the front listing. So when I just click into it really quick, it just shows the top one without an image. Let me know in the comments if you know why. Someone in the comments, thank you last time, pointed out that is why it doesn't get listed there. And I apologize for maybe missing it for weeks. So this may have been there for a while. It's still there. It just, again, I clicked through very quickly and I screwed that up this time. At least I caught it live for you to watch me be a fool. So anyways, let's move on. Crew down 16, this first edition box, 16.29%. That's a substantial drop to $3.99 from $4.64. This is a bit problematic, but I think reflective of what we were just saying. Crew is not as loved as it once was. It used to be kind of the coveted love set, and it just doesn't have the value it used to, right? We have Everfest replacing it in a lot of ways, in rarity, in playability, cards that are playable, in power. I think a lot of things just shifted on from the era of Crew being a very awesome set. So I think this one's going to be down for a while until it becomes so scarce that it's actually rare and hard to find. When that happens, we don't know. And with macro environment, which we'll talk about in a second, it could be any sort of thing, right? Everfest down 13.46%, first edition box again. This is a weird one. We've seen some upward pressure on this for a while. Clearly, we've had a downward move for the past 3 weeks or so. I don't know what's causing this in particular. I wonder how long it will last, and I think we might see some interesting opportunities with the dynamics between the box and the case over time, because the case will eventually play catch up, I suspect. And if it drops quickly, you might be able to snag some real good opportunities sometime in the call it next 2-3 months. But that's one to keep an eye on. Set an alert, TCG Player Sniper. I think it's called that, TCG Player. Yeah, TCG Sniper, I think. One of those two, Google it. It allows you to set a price alert on any particular item. You can use it for free. I think you do have to sign up because it sends emails. So you have to have an email to send to. But yeah, useful for things like this where you're like, I suspect something's going to happen in the next X time period. You just set the alert. It'll send you an email when that target is hit. Very good for picking up grabs that are happening, or vice versa. If you're looking to unload something and you're looking for a price spike, i.e. Brute cards, right, happened. I talked about Brute cards for the longest time, months and months and months, before Metrics was even announced. EVO was even announced. I called Brute cards as being the next because I was using the back of the card as like a symbol indicator, and it turned out I was wrong. But point being that I thought Brute cards would be next, and as a result, I ended up buying a bunch of stuff. So I set alerts. A bunch of them obviously went off with heavy hitters because clearly the prices spiked on a lot of those cards. Moving on, Uprising up 10.39%, phenomenal move up. Reality Check, it was here 2 weeks ago, but we talked about this, how it's kind of knocking on the door and continuing to move upwards, and that the bottom is basically moving up as well. So we see this upward pressure on both sides, the up and down in the volatility, and that tends to just lead to this. There's something giving a market push up, and there's fluctuations as supply and demand get sorted out, but it's heading upwards for now. How long this lasts, we don't know. Is this a kind of looking for that next plateau? We don't know. I will say the last time we saw this was around the time, I think it was WTR moved up, which it has since kind of retraced, and which happened right after ARK moved up. It did a similar thing. I remember talking specifically about that volatility and how that leads to new plateaus and levels as supply basically runs out, and the market's trying to figure out what there actually is. And that's what this looks like to me. Uprising looks like it's on the verge of a new level because supply is reducing, and so that price is going to try to find a new equilibrium with the ongoing demand around, I don't know, Phi, Dromai, whatever it is that sells Uprising boxes, right? So I do think that's the thing to keep an eye on. We talked about it last week. If it continues to show this sort of volatility until we get a resolution on new price level, I'll continue to keep an eye on it, and we'll check the charts on that one. Dusk Till Dawn up 7.5% to 80 from 74. Not that big a deal. It was 80 and it's been stable at 80 for a long, long time. It was actually kind of a surprise to see this downward tick, and now we're back up in it again. Didn't even take 2 weeks to resolve, unlike back here it took 2 weeks, if you notice. This to me says it keeps dropping back down to the 70 to 60 range. I'm guessing we're hitting the peak demand at this point, and so it's kind of trailing off, and supply is almost even, which is why we're kind of seeing it stay about even and continue at this pace. That said, I imagine it's going to hit a situation where the supply runs out because of things like the Angels regarding this win recently. What was it, Battle Hardened, Connecticut, whatever the recent event was where Prism ended up taking it. So obviously player-driven meta, player-driven markets. This market is reflecting the fact that people are now hyped about Prism again. So boom, incoming excitement, incoming box sales. If they restrained supply of Dusk Till Dawn, which we don't really know where the line is on this. If they did restrain supply, then expect these to basically jump up fairly quickly throughout over time. They've always been a little elevated. I don't know if you've noticed this, but let's see if I can get this on the screen too. Yeah, if you note, the cases never went low. Oh, I lied. They did go low for a minute, but they did not go low for long, right? They hit this 280 mark, which we see a lot of cases get to before they typically drop to the 250s, but then it came right back and it stayed there the whole time. I think this return was around Angel Arson hype, right? Again, market driven by players. As it started to fall off, it started to sink back down because people were like, oh no, it's not really going to be a thing. Well, guess what? It's a thing. We just saw it win. Now, is there a clear way to beat it? Is it a dominant thing? This is where I think we're at a pivot point in Flesh and Blood, and Tommy and I have talked about this a little bit, where there's so many heroes in the field that it really is about skill and familiarity with your hero more so than like this is the deck. In which case, I don't know how often we'll see those spikes hold when it comes to a winning deck, because it's not just a winning deck. It won that tournament because of who they ended up lining up against and all these other factors that come into play that are different than just it's the best deck, right? I don't know that we're seeing the best deck. I think it has bad matchups. The person didn't get into those bad matchups or were better than the other players like it should be for a skill-based tournament, which I think Flesh and Blood represents beautifully. And it's just a matter of that person managed to make it. It's not about the cards being dominant. It's about the player being dominant, right? Which I think is how it should be again. And so I wonder if we're going to see future market activity change in reflection of this. It's not about a particular card or deck. Obviously, you'll have hype cycles, right? Like everyone wants to try KO, everyone wants to try Brute, whatever, right? So you'll have things where the market moves based on players trying new things, or someone wins, it's really exciting, everyone follows that deck. That's also a thing, but I don't know that we'll have the sustained levels that we saw back with, say, the Lexi meta, or the meta where there was a dominant set of decks and you knew what it was and you knew where those cards were. It was very driven in specific directions. We'll have that to a degree. I think the clarity on it will dissipate over time as more and more heroes are introduced and as more and more spread on how to play happens. And with that, I'm talking about, think of Guardian. There's really only one way to play it under Bravo, and then we had the expansion in Oldhim, and then contraction back to Bravo, essentially because of Oldhim's LL. And now we're seeing a new way to play it again. So you see, there'll be these pinch points and such around LLs and things like that, but I think the clarity is going to get fuzzy in a lot of ways as we move forward, and I really do think that's the future of the Flesh and Blood markets, and I think it's fantastic. It means there isn't just an answer, right? There's multiple answers, and your skill is the determining factor, which is awesome for a competitive tournament. Moving on, honorable mention, Evo up 4.35%. This is first edition boxes, to 69. We were here. We've seen this 5% back and forth in this area. It's just a mini volatility. It's not even a lot. It's 4%. Over the past several months, actually, this range. I think it's about to change, and I'll explain why in a second. Actually, I'll explain right now. Moving down to Evo cases. They're at 351. They jumped 27.92%. That's remarkable and worth noting just in itself. It can happen on meta moves, right? Say Dash has an answer to the Prism Angel deck, or whatever it's called. Sorry, the Angel deck, the Prism deck. Sorry, that just won. I can speak. I swear, I know how words work. and say this is just a counter to it, right? So people are just excited, blah, blah, blah. That happens, right? But this, I think, is different. And the reason why is this. Note 351's the price. Note recent sales 253, 253, 253. Note there's only one page of cases available on TCG Player. 9 listings. 25, 30 boxes total until there's no cases. Sorry, 25, 30 cases until there's no cases listed on TCG Player anymore. I just try to put an order in with distro. Now I have this weird system that I'm using to get the boxes, so my information set for that is not always clear as to availability, right? And so as a result, I don't actually know if it's available. I'll find out within a couple of days. My order will basically just be canceled, and that means they don't actually have it. Now Rudy said Heavy Hitters was out at distro, and I can reflect that my document says that there's none available at distro. I can't order it. Now we know, because it's a recent set, that they're going to put out more waves. We don't know that that's the case with Evo. They probably will, but if, as Tommy suspects, they are trying to keep it at map, they probably won't put out a lot. They'll probably keep it very limited in how Evo gets distributed, and as a result, this may be the future of fab pricing. You may get an under map, which is 350, by the way, 351, I think. You may get an under map price for a period after release, right? Like we got it for a nice long period, right? Since October, right? But after that initial kind of market flush, we're now looking at it happening fast and coming up. And we talked about this on a couple of these other products, how we said it was, I think it was Dynasty, Outsiders, and then Dusk Till Dawn, kind of indicated that the market flips back to kind of a low supply faster, and it was happening faster and faster with each of the 2.0 products. Clearly Uprising never quite got there. Dynasty started going up a while ago, right? Outsiders, and it, note the difference, draft, non-draft, right? Didn't quite get there, right? Evo is a draftable product, but I'm guessing they cut the print run back, or at least the release. Remember, they're doing the warehouse thing. They cut that back so that maintaining map is easier, right? They didn't just say, hey, Rudy, stay at map. They said, hey, everybody, we're going to help it stay at map by being careful about supply. And that is reflected in that Fluke interview. And I think it's very realistic that they are getting enough data and are at a point where they have the infrastructure in place, the logistics in place to manage that fairly well. The downside to it is a really popular set's going to sell out really fast, i.e. Heavy Hitters, and the market may get a little insane, but I don't think that's a bad thing as long as they can manage it, by releasing more and they have that ability. I think they're doing something really great here. I honestly do. And I think it's going to be reflected in the market. I think it took a few sets to get the data they needed, and now they're starting to implement. And I have a feeling Evo is probably, we're seeing something new here. So this is the first look at that. How long it lasts, I don't know. They could dump a bunch on the market, but they're clearly trying not to do that. It isn't over map, so this is where they want it to be. This is the target. But jumping 27% in a week is significant and noteworthy, and worth paying attention to. So I think they're playing a bit of a dynamic here, and it's great. I think it will ultimately be very beneficial for the market, the sealed market, etc. I will tell you, as someone who has collected fab since Monarch, I guess, and I have stuff all the way back to Arc first. Well, actually, technically WTR. I have a box at WTR first, but this makes me feel good. I like this. It doesn't need to be above map, but I like the fact that it did the check mark. We've talked about this in the past. If you've been watching me for a long time, the check mark where it dips below and it's just like, it's not interesting. It's boring now, right? And then it ticks back up slowly, and then it starts to do the step function back up, right? The check mark, watching for that curve in Magic Seal product used to be pretty straightforward. The time of that curve could be long or short depending on the popularity of the set, but the curve was very clearly there. It was a supply constraint, oversupply, flushing of the system constraint, and then rise of price with supply dissipating into the market, right? If Flesh and Blood is achieving that, if they are structuring that intentionally and doing it to keep things, just call it a map, that's fine. And that's their target and their goal, and they're able to do that, freaking fantastic. That's very exciting as a sealed collector. And I will say that I am curious whether I get my case of Evo, because I never bought a case of Evo. The last thing I bought, I have 2 cases of Dusk Till Dawn, and that was the last case I bought of Flesh and Blood, and I have not bought a case of Heavy Hitters yet. I'm looking at it, waiting for the price to go down, but since it's not available at distro, quote unquote, I'm sure it will be again, but since it's not there, I have to wait for the secondary market to either dip, or I have to wait for distro availability to happen once again. Evo was listed, but I don't know that it was actually there, and I'm guessing based on this price activity that it's not actually there. So I'll find out, and I'll report back next week if I remember. I'll try to remember. But yeah, I just thought this was interesting. It's a change in dynamic. Very exciting to see this happen. Very cool if they're able to pull it off. It's going to be hard. Like, they're going to screw this up a little bit, and that's fine. Like, they're figuring it out, but they're on the right track, and they're trying. They're trying. That's the key to me, is that they're trying to get it right. Heavy Hitters, 344.87, hasn't moved. It's just shy of map, so whatever, good enough. In my opinion, and if we see it flush a little bit, that's fine. I don't know that we will. It's a popular set. I've talked to a lot of my card friends, including Tommy, and they're all in on Heavy Hitters. It's a very popular set. It sounds like, and I don't know if this is true, but at least locally, the not sealed, the draft meta structure is complex. Like, it's a puzzle. It's a fun puzzle to figure out. So I'm excited to hear more about that. Yeah, fantastic. Well done, LSS. You deserve a round of applause, and keep working at it. It's fantastic what you're trying to do. I hope it succeeds. Moving on to macro environment, I did want to talk about this because we talked about it last week. The FOMC meeting, Fed came out and said what they said. It did look like things were getting pushed out a little bit. The market kind of ignored it, priced it, ignored it. Basically said, okay, well, it's not happening yet, but we'll probably see it happen soon, right? Basically doubting the word, but then we got CPI data. And it's funny that people listen to the Fed, but then don't believe them until they see the same data that the Fed's been looking at for months, right? You understand this. They have this data before we do. So, whatever. I know it's hard to read the tea leaves of the Fed, but CPI data came out, and it is down. This is inflation, core inflation, consumer price index. So it's the stuff that matters for people, day-to-day lives, right? Food, etc., transportation. Core CPI is down, so we don't have as much inflation as we did the last time it was reported, but it wasn't down as much as expected. There was a target, and this came from the Fed, of 2.9. The real data, and this is I forget what they call it. It's not raw data. It's like the first pass. They correct these after 3 or 4 months when they're able to collect all the data and do the math more efficiently. You get a revised number, but the first number is always a valuable indicator, even if it's slightly off. It needs to be tweaked over time. And no, it's not politically tweaked. It's tweaked because doing the math is difficult, and there's lots of factors that go into it, but I'm not going to get into that. This data does matter. Supposed to be 2.9, expected to be 2.9, was 3.1. I believe that was the number. Still down. I think it was 3.2 or 3 something last time. But there was a thought that there was an accelerating decline in inflation. And in fact, this is a slowing decline. So this is less down than the last time it went down, right? The delta is smaller. So what that means is inflation pressures are perhaps rising. We don't know, right? Perhaps rising, while the effects of the Fed interest rates are decreasing. And we talked about this in the past, where you get price sensitivity, price familiarity, and 5% interest rates is not high. I know people are like, oh my God, inflation's insane, because it is for a long time, but not forever, right? Like in the 80s, we were, I don't remember the exact number, but we're in like 18%, right? We're nowhere close to that. We never got close to that. And the drama and panic that people spit out there, the vile and vitriol, was ridiculous, because they basically have no context. And I get that, right? It's, 80s was a long time ago. That's fair. But point being, this country has seen way worse, right? People bought houses with 15% interest on their mortgage. Now, house prices were a lot lower. So you got that. There is a difference there. But you get the idea that in a high interest rate, high inflation environment, which we've seen before, there is still consuming activity and things like that. Obviously, we're in a very different dynamic, different world, and different level of information spread. The time of that era was like, pre-internet, so information didn't move as fast. Markets weren't able to react as fast. That said, 8% inflation, which we did end up getting to, was heated, did need correction. Obviously, that happened. We're down to 3.1 from, I think it was 3.3. And it is cooling, but it is slower. And I have a feeling that there might be a little bit of a residual of people basically getting used to what this new interest rate looks like and getting comfortable with it. 5% is fine, And if you have a diversified portfolio, none of this financial advice, but if you have a highly diversified portfolio and you took the time to shuffle things around to take advantage of the high interest rates, you're now seeing that as a return on that portfolio. And so that can defray the cost of borrowing. If you're like a mega company, right, that has all these different lines of credit and banking facilities and all these things, bonds, etc., you can structure your internal financial to take advantage of the interest rate, cash and bonds, government bonds or whatever, right? And to defray the costs of things that you're borrowing, right? Because maybe you need a line of credit, right? Which is, that interest rate plus, right? So what that does is it helps balance. And when everyone gets their money sorted out where it balanced, that 5% doesn't hurt as much, right? That's not true for the consumer unless you are liquid enough to make those kinds of moves. And we've talked about buying bonds and things like that to take advantage of these sorts of rates in the past, high interest savings account, et cetera. Point being that I think a lot of people have adjusted and gotten to a point where the pain isn't so real. And so the decrease in inflation starts to become less of a factor. And I've also seen a recent report again of companies just gouging. It's so frustrating because I think this latest report had it as like 80% of the inflationary pressure we're seeing is literally price gouging. It's literally price gouging. 83% of companies that reported inflationary pressures, guess what? Their inputs rose less than their profits. So that means they're just gouging. It's not inflationary driving the final pricing that individual consumers are seeing. It's them price gouging because basically their inputs did not rise that much. So they're just trying to catch more margin and see how much they can get away with. And when you see that much of it happening in the market, it ends up causing harm, and we're seeing it. And it shows a failure of some parts of the market system because that is supposed to be contained by competition. You can't price gouge when there's 50 people trying to sell the same thing. Trust me, I know. I sell singles on TCG Player. When 100 people are trying to sell the same card because it's hot, the price just goes down, right? Because that's how you get the sale. You reduce the price. Well, when you have monopolistic or oligopoly, that no longer happens, and so you can price gouge, and that's what we're seeing. We've had far too much consolidation across too many key industries, and this artificial inflation that we've seen, and it has been now mathematically proven to mostly be artificial. I think it was 60% early on, post 2020, like 2021 or so. It was like 60% corporate greed, excessive price fixing, way above expense increases. And again, just go look for headline record profit and find out the companies, and you'll know any company that's had record profit over the period they were claiming inflation, that is a fallacy. That doesn't make sense. And we're now seeing it again, and I think it's at a higher rate. So anyways, point being, these inflationary or pseudo-inflationary pressures are not gone and probably won't be gone for a while. So what ends up happening is that we're going to stay at higher interest rates for longer. We may even put on interest rate increases back on the table. trying to drain the system, right? It is working though. Again, this is a downward movement. It's just a slower downward movement. If it reverses, I think the Fed looks back at increasing interest rates, increasing the pain for these companies to be doing this, and flushing the system as much as possible. And we'll see what happens. But it was interesting. The equities, when the CPI number came out, they dumped, and we had, I think, the first major decline in the year. And I think it was like 500 points for the Dow, and it was basically 1.7%-ish on Dow and S&P, give or take. And it was the biggest dump we've seen this whole year, and, you know, blah, 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 big panic, whatever. Next day, it's all recovering. It just shows where this market is. It's very resilient, and these effects aren't quite flushing out as they have historically because of these kind of non-competitive actors and the sort of system that we have in place now. Unfortunately, by allowing for consolidation, which I know natural monopoly, I understand the theory. It's mostly bupkis, but, you know, that's debatable. That would be a nice, you know, beer and conversation situation to talk about that. But I think it's mostly BS when it comes to the idea of natural monopoly. There's very, very few cases where it's justifiable and beneficial to the market participants other than the monopoly. So therefore, it should be regulated. According to Adam Smith himself, he hated regulated markets. Now we're getting into real economics here. He hated regulated markets, but he did have one quote specifically in, oh God, I can't even remember his seminal work, where he defined capitalism. It's so funny. I just like totally blanked on it. Anyways, Wealth of Nations. Is that it? I think. He has a quote in there where it's basically, I'm misquoting it. It was basically like, you can't get two merchants together without them having lunch and price fixing, right? And he said the one role of government, again, paraphrasing, was to prevent that. And the reason why is because if you don't have market competition, it doesn't work. The entire concept of capitalism fails because it's about competitive markets helping price be found naturally. And when you have monopoly, you don't find price because there's no competition. And so that was the one place he said regulation belonged. Other than that, he was laissez-faire for the most part, right? That came later, but you get the idea. And so he said anywhere there's price fixing, which monopoly is, or oligopoly also is often, you know, that was the one place that regulation had to step forward or the whole system fails. So the one place the father of capitalism says to act, and we're not doing it. We're ignoring it. So, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. Have a beer with me sometime. I'd love to chat about this stuff because I find it so fascinating in the history of economics and such. Anyways, let's get onto the charts. Sorry, that was a long ramble. Hope you're still with me. If you are, hashtag Adam Smith. Let me see who's out there still listening at this point. Which charts do we want to look at? What was most interesting here? Everfest we'll definitely check out because I want to keep an eye on that one. Uprising I think is cool, and then let's check out Evo too. So all of those were in first edition. Everfest, Uprising. All right, let's see what we got here. Okay, yeah. See, we're seeing the premium spike on Everfest here. So, yeah, this is why I was saying the cases are bound to give us an opportunity here. I don't know about you guys. There's lots of supply in the market. Don't FOMO. Don't worry about these things. But if this tends to happen, right? If the case price follows, which actually historically looks like it led a little bit here, right? Because it dropped and then these prices dropped. But then, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. They're kind of just out of parity, in parity sort of thing. They're definitely out of parity now. So point being, I expect some dramatic snap somewhere in here because we are out of bounds. It happens, and then we tighten up. It happens, and then we tighten up, right? Like this was what like here's a perfect example. Last time we got this out of parity, the price spiked. So maybe these boxes end up shooting way up past the case. I honestly think the cases have a more likely ability to come down. But the reality is, with less supply and supply as low as it is, I think we know that there's some upward pressure on this particular product. And aside from that, the playability of the cards, right? So between them burning unlimited, it being what the third or fourth least common set when you consider unlimited and limited together, and its usefulness in the playability, I think we have a pretty solid case for upward pressure. Maybe this is just a steal on boxes, and we never see these kinds of low prices again. I could absolutely see that happening, but none of this is financial advice. So keep that in mind. Do what's right for you. Take care of your family first. Take care of your debts first. And get your life in order before you waste money on cardboard. Just keep that in mind. So Everfest, let's go Uprising. Yeah, we are definitely seeing that volatility. This seems familiar. This is what it looked like on ARK right before it went to a new level. Do we see that? Do we think that Uprising was one that had kind of a restrained, not completely, but a restrained print run, and we're starting to see the move up because the supply and demand have kind of matched out? It's possible. And I've been looking for this for a long time on Uprising. We've talked about it here in the past where it was the first 2.0 product. We wanted to see how it played out. It was going to set the tone for others, but then the others kind of moved at a different pace. And again, I think what happened is they didn't really know, right? They didn't have solid data. Maybe 2.0 was the beginning of this like waved warehouse situation. And so they released a lot because they weren't sure and they wanted to kind of stick with what was closest. And then the next set they released a little bit less, right? And then the next set they released a little bit less, right? And so now we're starting to get to Evo where it's like, and Heavy Hitters where it's like run out already, right? So it's very possible that they've been dialing it down over this time, very slowly, cautiously, and wisely, if you ask me, to get to the point where they can figure out where the bound of the system is, right? And this is actually really good management if this is the case. I work with startups, and we talk about doing this all the time, where you have to do just price adjustments, or you have to do marketing spend adjustments, things like that. You want to move the lever slowly as much as you can until you start to see the opposite of what you're looking for, like until you push it too far. And then you want to dial it back, but not all the way back, like slowly get it to about halfway back, and then you slowly bring it up and then go basically between that top level where it went too far and the halfway back, right? So you're now like 3/4 up. You get my point. You're going up and down until you kind of zoom in on the specific target KPI. In this case, we're trying to get box prices at map, right? So if that's what they're doing, if they slowly crank down the print run, now they're starting to see Heavy Hitters probably too far, right? Crank it back up for the next one, right? But not too far, right? And then they crank it back down, until they get just right, until they can make that smooth check mark release where it comes out, it drops a little bit for a while, but then it levels out at map and kind of holds in there and slowly increases over time. That is the ideal. If they can land that kind of plane with a set release and do it repeatedly, which is going to be super hard because like what's in the set matters, obviously, right? Player driven market. If they can pull that off though, or even close to it, even if they can just pull it off like once a year, right? It's not every set, but they nail it on one set a year. That is phenomenal for the future of this company. It says a lot about management and how they're approaching it if that happens. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We don't know that that's what's happening here, but I suspect it is because this volatility spike on an upward pressure movement, it speaks to what we've seen in the past with ARK and WTR when they start to run out of supply. So definitely worthwhile to keep an eye on that going forward. Moving into Evo. Oh my God. All right. So this is the lever. It was pulled too hard. It should not be release +1 is wah. Wait, no, I'm sorry. This is Evo. This isn't even Heavy Hitters. Well, this is still, it looks like the lever maybe, actually, I don't know. Would this be good? I don't know. That jump is too much. It's a little dramatic. It makes me feel like it's not good. Oh my God. It's so funny. Look at this. Look at this. Oh my God. It's so funny. We had an ARB opportunity 2 weeks ago. I guess it was only $5. No. It was $15. Oh my God. $15 ARB opportunity 2 weeks ago, and now the premium is skyrocketed. It's good though. I mean, I think, okay, maybe this is too long and low, right? Maybe it was. So maybe it's good that they're pulling it back up like this. I don't know. We'll have to see how this plays out. This is actually very interesting. Unfortunately, I can't look at Heavy Hitters. There's not much to look at, actually. The data is very clear, just flat. Sorry, I still haven't done this. I know I'm slacking. But and the data will be interesting. Yeah, we got to get this one working. I'll try to get that for next week. I just haven't had the time to really do with it. I have to like redo all these formulas. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So I just, excuses. But yeah, I think they're pulling levers. I think they're experimenting, and so far I like what I see. That's basically it from my perspective. I hope you guys are out there cracking packs, playing games, and enjoying this hobby that we love. Until next time, have a good one.